The following is a 5 for 2 production. Welcome to the official episode of Ticket Stubs. How you doing, Todd?
I'm good, buddy. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, buddy. I'm doing
Anything
good.
new and exciting?
I don't know. Got a little more jewelry these days.
Would you go to the pawn shop, pick that up?
No, as we talked about on last week's episode, when you wished us well, and showed a card that still hasn't shown up in the mail. So, anyway, but we recorded that a few weeks ago, and yes, I am a married man. Heather, who everybody knows from our Pearl Jam story.
God bless her.
We finally made it official. So, anyway, it was wonderful.
It was
a wonderful weekend
for you, buddy. So it's I wanted to start this show off with a little bit of a celebration because the show is a bit of a it's kind of a downer.
little bit. We're gonna make it fun though. But cheers, thank you very much.
So congratulations to my buddy Heather and Kevin Montavon, who are now officially betrothed.
I told her now it's her job to correct people on the pronunciation and stuff.
No more living in sin for these two.
That's right. She's excited to correct people on the pronunciation of the name. But all right, now we of course
already covered all the other V's.
Yeah, we did that last week.
One reason and one reason only tonight.
That's right. Now I am actually going to do a little a story about one other thing here before we get going. Since we are talking about Eddie Van Halen, who we lost on October 6th of 2020, we also lost a great songwriter this week. We lost two great songwriters this week, Jerry Jeff Walker and Billy Joe Shaver, which I'm actually wearing this shirt right here. And in the tradition of me telling a Charlie Daniels story after the C and the D episode, I'm going to tell a quick Billy Joe Shaver story here. I got to see Bill. For people who don't know, Billy Joe Shaver, he wrote a lot of your favorite country songs, your favorite old classic country songs. Black Rose, The Devil Made Me Do It the first time, second time I did it on my own. Old Five and Dimers, George on a Fast Train, Old Chunk of Coal, and I know you love this one, Todd. If you don't love Jesus Christ, you can go to hell. But anyway, so Billy toured a lot in his later years, probably paying off some divorces or something. But
pay off the man.
But I got to meet him twice. At the first time, I did get my picture taken with the man. I'll put that up on the screen here for people to see. But the second time, I actually worked his merch booth. It was the day of the show. And I answered a Facebook ad. This Facebook ad comes up. Does anybody want to work merch for, Billy Joe Shaver tonight? It was like on his Facebook management or something. So I, hit the links, hit the message or whatever. And they said, all right, come over, be there at 7, or whatever. So I show up and there's this other guy, Chad. He showed up too. So we're the two guys that are going to run the merch booth, So some of his band members bring in some boxes of T-shirts and they're like, go ahead and start laying these out, and get yourself organized. Then his bass player comes in, Todd, and he hands me a cash box full of money. I mean, there were hundreds, if not like $1,000 in this box. I could have turned and walked right out of the club right then. And speaking of disappearing, before Billy ever even played, Chad excused himself to go to the bathroom and never came back. Now, he didn't steal the cash box, but poor Kev was left on his own to sell merch.
He's wanted to get into the show. See, that's something I do. That'd be something I do. I'm going to work the merch booth. I'll be right back.
Oh, what? I got to actually work? I thought I was just going to drink beer with the band and throw some T-shirts at people. But anyway, so I made it.
Free weed and the hookers.
So I made it through the night, selling T-shirts and and all kinds of Billy Joe Saver, goodies to all these rednecks all night long. And the end of the night comes, last customers left, and I mean, this cash box is just stuffed now, So I go to try to give it back to the bass player, and he's like, "Oh, no, you have to give that back to Billy himself." So he escorts me to the dressing room, and Billy's kind of sitting in there holding court, I walk up, "Great show, Mr. Shaver. Here's your merch money." Looks up at me kind of serious, like, "So, help yourself to a T-shirt?" I'm like, no, sir. And he's like, he looks at the band, he's like, "You believe this guy? He didn't take nothing for himself." They start laughing and busting my balls, Todd, for not stealing from them. So I assume with this method of merch sales where they just show up to a town and have a volunteer and hand him money, they probably get ripped off a lot.
A certain percentage is going to go missing at the end of the night.
Yeah. So Billy walks me out to the merch booth and says, pick out one of whatever you want. So I didn't go hog wild. I did get this killer Billy Joe Shaver shirt, Live Forever. Alas, he did not live forever. And I got his book, Honky Tonk Heroes.
That's nice. You get it signed?
Yep, autograph. Bless you, Billy Joe.
There you go.
God bless Billy Joe Shaver. That's my story. Hopefully he is up there maybe teaching Eddie Van Halen some country licks.
Well, and as I was doing my research for my Van Halen story, which, by the way, is now finished, for those wondering how the progress on Ticket Stubs, the book, is going.
You're up to V.
Folks, I'm almost done.
You're caught up here to our episodes.
Yeah. I gotta finish the W stories before we get to the next week episode, but I think that's possible this weekend. Great. And so yeah, I'm hoping that all right. So by the time we get to the Z episode, I should have a pretty good idea of where I stand on this book. And now Kevin and I will take a little hiatus since we are kind of a few weeks ahead of time here on the schedule. And then for New Year's Eve, we are going to have an updated brand new episode. So hopefully by then, you can find out exactly where the progress of the book is and when you can buy one, and I can start making some money and never have to go back to my restaurant job ever again.
Right on. Yeah, once we get all this wrapped up, Todd, I got big plans for this whole podcast thing. We're going to chop up all the long episodes into the individual band stories, put out all kinds of what they call micro.
All I know is I'm taking 6 months off, and I'm working on new episodes of What the Hell Was That, Kevin? So we're just going to run reruns from January through June of 2021.
Right. You know it. But, all right, well, let's get to our main event tonight. I wanted to have a special episode dedicated to this one band because, we started off this whole thing with A, and we just specifically dealt with AC/DC. Then we kind of got into a few bands, and then we, somewhere around episode F, we just started throwing the kitchen sink, at everything. So there are some bands we didn't cover in the earlier episodes, but I thought Van Halen, since we did lose Eddie here, would deserve their own. They deserve their own episode. So,
and oddly enough, like I said, as I was doing research for this book, all right, Kevin, here's a trivia question: who was the original bass player for Van Halen?
Guy named he passed away recently. I know that. I don't think it was Matt Stone. I think that was.
Yeah.
Well, okay, it was. Yeah, I got it right. Right on. Cool.
So he actually passed away, I think, a couple weeks right before Eddie. So the original bass player that before Michael Anthony also passed away.
Right on.
Again, this is stuff that I never knew about Van Halen while doing the research for the book that I found interesting. The fact that while Eddie and Alex were forming a band in L.A., Randy Rhoads was forming his band with Quiet Riot pretty much the exact same time.
Yeah, there were. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but yeah, there were 3 big guitar heroes. I read a great book, and I recommend this book. It's called Van Halen Rising, and it is specifically about their club days leading up to. The book ends on the first tour, on the tour for the first album. So you get a lot of the early info about like the parties and there were 3 contemporary guitar players, that were the hotshot guitar players in LA at the time, and it was Randy Rhoads, as you mentioned, Eddie, and George Lynch. And here's a little factoid for you, Todd, a little trivia. the night that Gene Simmons discovered Van Halen, he was actually going to see George Lynch's band at the time, not, pre-Dokken. So Van Halen happened to play first, and Gene was like, oh, shit, I'm going to go talk to these guys. And so he was in a dressing room while George Lynch's band was playing.
Now, I have I won't say a different, well, it is a different story. I heard that Rodney Bingenheimer took Gene to Gazzari's to see Van Halen. I don't know anything about this whole George Lynch thing.
Yeah, well, the something, somewhere in that story, Gene was actually, maybe Rodney Bingenheimer actually took him to see George Lynch's band. The story has gotten changed around through the years. I never know.
We'll have to, we should call Rodney. He's still alive, right? I'd be willing to bet we could get Rodney Bingenheimer as a guest on the show. If I can pronounce his name properly, maybe we could.
Mr. Bingenheimer.
Bingenheimer. But hey, maybe we're all right. We can get Pamela to bar. Now that'd be a great show.
You would do an extra episode if you could get Pamela to bar on.
No, sure. I'd do anything for Pamela to bar.
Literally.
All right, so back to Eddie. Right,
so Todd, going back to like our first episode, when did you discover Van Halen? When did they come on your radar?
Yeah, it had to be in high school, MTV era. I was trying to think about this tonight. Like, what were the things that? Because I never got to see him with Roth.
I did.
That may have been an age thing where I wasn't old enough to go see him at the time. But I definitely remember like things like seeing the movie Better Off Dead with John Cusack and the hamburger scene with Everybody Wants Some. Now that's a Van Halen moment right there.
I was listening.
Iconic in the 80s.
I was listening to one of our competitors' podcasts, and actually they probably got a lot. He does have millions of more listeners than us, but Chris Jericho was doing a Van Halen tribute, and they were talking about that. Van Halen moved from just being a band into the pop culture when they started, being referenced in movies like Better Off Dead, and when Spicoli hired them.
Ridgemont High.
Yeah, exactly. So at that point, they were basically like an adjective or a verb to describe the 80s. That was your go-to.
Or just to describe rock and roll at the time.
Exactly.
Your generic rock and roll band. Throw out Van Halen.
Right on. Now, I discovered Van Halen from the same guy who turned me on to Rush, a guy named Chuck Murray. And it was, we used to make fun of him for liking Van Halen. We were like, Van Haven, and he'd be all pissed off. He'd be, it's Van Halen, and he's the greatest fucking guitar player in the world. So finally, I let Chuck play me some Van Halen. Freaking loved it. But the first Van Halen purchase I bought was at a local flea market in Wheelersburg, and this guy went there every Saturday, and he sold bootleg cassettes. You remember bootleg cassettes by chance? You buy a cassette, and it would have the cover of the cassette you were, that you thought you were buying. Maybe a little bit of a lower quality on the printing. Well, when you'd open it up, you'd have literally a blank, clear or a blank cassette, and it would be stamped C label for sequence. Now, if the cassette that was bootleg did not have the song titles on like the little back side of the cassette, you were fucked. You just had to kind of figure it out yourself. But I bought
just make up the names yourself.
Right. I bought this album, Van Halen Diver Down, on bootleg cassette. I eventually got it on vinyl here. Chuck Murray, I think, traded me for some album once for Van Halen. This isn't that copy, but that's a whole nother matter. I remember getting a copy of the album, whatever I traded him for, back. And it was like literally just fingerprints all over the thing. I think I remember when I took the album. We used to trade albums. I remember one time I stopped doing this with him after I went to his house one time, and he was like eating Kentucky Fried Chicken or something. Like, yeah, here, thanks for giving me your, thanks for putting me that album there. Like, but anyway, my first two Van Halen albums, Todd, and these are actually them. They were one of my, remember, 6 albums for a penny from the RCA Music Club.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. 2 of my 6 were, oddly enough, 2 of my 6 were AC/DC, For Those About to Rock, and Back in Black. But also, these 2 right here. Van Halen.
There you go.
Fair warning.
I don't even have any Van Halen vinyl anymore, unfortunately. That was all sold for beer money years ago.
Now, Women and Children First, of course. We talked about like the goodies that came in albums, like with Kiss.
Right.
Women and Children First had this, and I'm sure that some of my friends may have questioned my sexuality for having this hanging on my wall in high school. Look how ripped this poster is when I come over here. But, can you see that? David Lee Roth chained to a fence.
Dude, I never had that poster.
Yeah. This actually, man, look how battered this is. But it actually hung on my wall all through high school. But the first album I bought the first album I bought brand new on release day was probably a lot of guys, maybe yours too. Was 1984.
Yeah, that was probably what did it.
Yeah, by that time, they were MTV darlings, and I still remember the New Year's Eve. I remember the New Year's Eve 1984 premiere at midnight of Jump on MTV. That was a big deal, and the fact that they had filmed the video themselves for like $500 or something like that, But
with Dave spinning his thing around.
So Todd, the album came out, was released, I think January, was released that week, first week of, I'd have to look up the actual release date. It was released very early in the year, and one of the first stops on the 1984 tour was
Charleston, West Virginia.
You got it, buddy. February 5th, 1984. Look at that right there. Van Halen. Now, Todd,
I know my buddy Kevin well. Now,
back then, this was my first. We've told so many stories about Charleston, West Virginia, but this is where it all started. This is where it all started for me, period. If you've talked about the shows that don't count. We've talked about some of my shows that don't count, the shows I went to with my dad when I was a kid. This is where I start counting rock concerts, because this is the first concert I bought a ticket for. Right. I remember getting my four friends' money, Dave and Joe Blankenship, Yancey Kaiser. We've talked about Dave and Yancey on this show many times. And I got their money. I wrote the letter to Charleston box office and sent away the check, the money order. Went to the post office, bought a money order. Got the tickets. The Blankenship's parents, they drove us. So my dad let up on his can't go to a concert until you're 16 and can drive yourself rule, which we've talked about. He didn't even.
Hey, someone else is driving, Dad. Come on now.
He liked the Blankenships. He trusted them. He thought, they were responsible parents. So he allowed us to go. Now, the Blankenships just dropped us off at the show and went about their evening. So, we were 4 15-year-olds.
Walking in the parking lot.
We were 3 15-year-olds and a 14-year-old just let loose in Charleston, West Virginia. Well, Todd, the first thing we noticed as we were walking up to the show was at the hotel across the Charleston Civic Center sat there, and then there was like a mall, a convention center type place, and a hotel all in one little complex. Well, back then, the artists would actually stay at the hotel next to the venue. Go figure. What a crazy idea. Well, we saw a crowd gathered at the hotel across the street, and we saw 2 limousines parked in front. We're like, it's got to be the band. Get ready to come over to the show. So we go across the street, and, we kind of push our way to like the front edge of the crowd. And sure enough, after a few minutes, first the Van Halen brothers come out, oh my God, it's them right there. Just, the car between us, and they get in, they drive off and just go across the street. About 5 minutes later, here comes Michael Anthony and David Lee Roth. And I literally run up to the, Roth got in first and slides over to the passenger side of the back. I run right up to the limo and like, Dave, love you, Dave. I'm right at the window. Of course, security guard, comes back, get back, sir, and they go over. My friend Dave Blankenship, one of the best storytellers and exaggerators in the world, over the course of the next 3 years of high school, this story became Kevin leaped on the Van Halen limo. He was on the hood of the car.
In the car.
I love you. And the security had to drag him away. So, God love you. So, we get into the show. Of course, we buy all the merch. Bought a T-shirt. I wish I still had that T-shirt. I'm going to put a picture up in post of our hot model friend, Patty McCowan, actually modeling the exact T-shirt I bought. So, people will enjoy that right about now. Hot stuff anyway. Van Halen was always about hot chicks, And of course, got the program, which was also a poster.
Yeah, see, I never saw him with Dave, man. I'm sorry. I never got to see him with Dave.
Yep. I've recently watched there's a bootleg Montreal 84 that's basically a full concert shot from like the second level. And I've watched that a few times since then. It's pretty much the set I saw. Now, the opening act that night, Todd, was Autograph, and they weren't even signed yet. No one had even heard of them. I find out later that Van Halen always had shitty opening acts on purpose, so that number one, they would take bands that weren't signed yet and didn't have any merch to sell, so that they get all the merch money. Also, nobody wanted to see those bands, so they would be out buying the Van Halen merch while that band was playing. Roth called them T-shirt acts, but so our seats were in the upper level, and one of my habits of concerts to this day started that very night. These seats suck. Let's go find some better seats. So we all moved down like the lower level, found some seats with a more straight on view of the stage. Show starts, man. They open with Unchained, which was my best friend's favorite song at the time. So we're like going crazy. About halfway through the show, Dave Blankenship elbows me. He's like, "Look at that!" And people were just leaping over the walls of the main level onto the floor and rushing the stage. So this is where I learned the stage rush habit. I just looked at Dave and was like, "See ya." I leaped the wall, joined the pack, wound up in like about the third row. I just remember standing on a chair while Eddie Van Halen was playing his guitar solo, and I mean, he was like 10 yards from me. So literally, Todd, the words life-changing gets thrown around a lot, but that fuck changed my life. I'm like, I want to be a fucking rock star, man. I was, Eddie Van Halen, it was like seeing God. So it was awesome. But
Hi, everybody.
When was your first Van Halen concert?
Sadly, not until about 1986 with Sammy Hagar.
Okay, well,
I love Sammy Hagar. All right, I'm not busting balls on Sammy. I find that the Sammy Hagar years were just not as good.
Well, but it's a weird thing. I've got a ticket stub from that same tour.
So that's from my show in Philly.
Oh, speaking of buttons and pins, when I said we bought all the merch at the 84 tour, I actually used to have a really cool pin I bought then that was just the Van Halen logo. And I got to buy this in like a flea market or something someday. But, it was just the Flying VH pin. It looked really sweet. Well, I remember I had it on a ski vest one time when we went to a ski trip in high school. And at one point, I'm coming down the hill yelling at my buddy like, "Hey, man, I'll meet you over there behind the ski." Right then, the cord for the for the lift totally cuts me off. Boom, 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 boom. I wind up with the thing, and I remember I lost my little Van Halen pin in that. See how things stick with you. I always remember I lost my Van Halen pin, man. Really? I wanted to dig through the snow and find it. But Sammy Hagar joining Van Halen was like the sum of two parts being not as good as either one of them were before, together.
Well, all right. Here's the way I put it in the book, and I'll give you folks a little preview here. So,
because I love Sammy solo. I was like a huge fan.
Again, I love Sammy solo.
I thought it was I was actually excited for him to be the singer of Van Halen. I was like, oh, that's cool. That's a great pick. All right, good for Sammy.
Right, exactly. So it's like like I said, it's like when Tommy Shaw and Ted Nugent joined together and formed a band. This should be great, right? Wrong. No, that sucked. That was a really bad idea. And
Damn Yankees had some good songs, but
they didn't.
What are you talking about? You're nuts. They had some great songs.
Take me high. All right, we're getting way off topic.
Come Again, awesome song. You once convinced me you were Satan to that song, but we just that's a whole nother matter.
That's another story. We're talking about Eddie. All right, poor Eddie. So after let's face it. So they made more money with Sammy.
Yep. First number one album. Every album they did with Sammy went number one. Just huge sales of this album, which this is the tour I did not see them on. the one that was like, you know.
But again, answer me this: when it comes to set lists, do you want to see is it love, or or do you want to see ain't talking about love? So
speaking of which, I mean, that's what pissed me off about Sammy the most is he didn't play a mix of the stuff. It's, you know, he played, when I saw him, they did.
It was always the same 2 fucking songs.
When
ain't
I
talking
saw
about love
and you really got me. And then he sometimes added in Jump and Panama. But when I saw them, it was You Really Got Me, which is a cover, Panama, and Ain't Talking About Love. Because I remember Sammy being up. He was one of the first guys with the little Garth Brooks microphone. And I just remember him being up in the rafters, up on the catwalk, singing the line, and there I stood and looked down. And, you know, that was like a big, oh, my God, Sammy's up.
Looking down. Wow.
Wow, this is so deep.
Yeah, it's as deep as Sammy Hagar gets when it comes to his lyrics. But
did you see Monsters of Rock tour? I think we've talked about this.
Yes, and that was sad. It was
but by that time I was kind of losing.
The 5150 tour.
By that time I was kind of losing. I was really losing it with Van Halen, you know.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I didn't even see the FUCK tour. I didn't see the Gary Cherone tour, although those set lists were awesome. If you ever go seriously look up, you know, those set lists, I think you remember you had a pretty funny story about the Live from the 10 spot on MTV at one point on a What the Hell Was That? And I could tell by the look in your eyes through your shades, you have no idea what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But so maybe I'll have to dig that up and put it on a retro episode of What the Hell Is That? It was pretty good. You had a pretty good take on it. But what I'm saying is the Van Halen were playing very good on that tour. If you watch bootlegs, and Cherone obviously was capable of, you know, doing the material, but that's the only time in Van Halen's history where you got really a pretty even mix of the Sammy years and the Dave years. And they were doing stuff like Mean Street and stuff off of Women and Children First that they hadn't done.
Well, that final tour in 2012, and granted, you know, I don't know how good Dave sounded at that point, but I mean, those set lists were great. The last time I saw him was 2004 with Sammy, and to be honest, the only 2 good songs were like Unchained and Somebody Get Me a Doctor,
and Michael sang that. Actually, I wanted to tell that quick story, Todd, because that was one of my first good haggles. You and I went
together.
Yes, you and I went to that show together. Look at the price on this ticket, $89.
I know we didn't pay that.
Todd and I didn't pay that. That was the first good haggle I ever really had with a scalper. I remember you and I, we went to a few different doors of the shot, and you know, the guys weren't really biting. And the one guy wanted 40 a piece, I think. He finally come down to about, I actually wanted 50 a piece. And we're like, no. And I think you were willing to go a little higher than me, as usual. You know, I was being a little bit more of a cheapskate. So I think I was only willing to offer him 20. You were willing to go 30, so we offered him 25 a piece. He's still like, no, you know, give me 50 a piece. And we're like, yeah, sorry, dude. So I just remember walking away, Todd, and this guy chased us down and was like, all right, man, I don't want to eat these. He was like almost crying. So
my wife's going to kill me, man. I spent too much money on these tickets. He's going to beat my ass when I get home. $70.
So Todd and I are sitting in these seats for 25 a piece, and we're looking at the people around us going, these fuckers paid like $100 with service charges.
Bunch of morons.
But we got lucky on that tour, Todd, because if Van Halen fans know this, that tour was real hit or miss with Eddie's playing. Some nights you can go on YouTube and see there's one where he's just like dragging his freaking monitor and kicking it over and throwing his guitar and yelling at his roadies and shit. And there's some nights where he's just so out of key, or he's like literally playing a different song than the band is. In Sammy's book, he tells us a great story. He said him on that tour, if you see a lot of like the videos and promo shots, Eddie sometimes was wearing his hair up in this top knot, like a Gene Simmons, or samurai kind of top knot.
Right.
And Sammy said him and Mike basically had this unspoken code. They would just like look at each other if this happened. They said on the nights when Eddie wore his hair down and looked like the old Eddie Van Halen, they're like, fucking show's going to be great. Yeah, right on. They're like, but if Eddie walked on stage with a top knot, said they would just look at each other like, fuck, here we go. 2 hours of pure hell coming up, you know.
He's wearing his bathrobe. He hasn't showered in 2 days. He's fucking still smells like, fucking, meth.
And I hate to speak ill of the dead, but I gotta tell this story too. Sammy also says in that same book, the moment where he finally had his final rift with Eddie, and apparently they did mend fences this year and we're keeping it a secret, so that's cool. But he said there was at one point on a plane flying from one gig to the other, he's like, Eddie was so drunk and pissed off over something, he was taking his champagne bottle and trying to smash the windows out of the plane. Sammy said he got off and he had separate management from the band. That tells you, things are great. And he said he told his manager, I'm never flying with that motherfucker again. And he said from that point on, it was separate dressing rooms, separate transportation. They finished the tour and, didn't speak again apparently till this year. But we got lucky, Todd. Eddie was wearing his hair down, and we actually got a good show. So
yeah. And again, it's just sad because he was one of the greatest guitar players in the history of guitar playing. But goddamn, let's face it, man. Once Valerie dumped his ass, it just went downhill.
Well, I know. I told you this recently. I was re-watching our E episode when it played on YouTube, and you dubbed Eddie Van Halen in that episode. Of course, we had no idea the guy was going to die this year, but you dubbed him one of the biggest assholes in rock. But
I stand by that statement, folks. I'm sorry. Now, look. I almost feel bad about saying that because, after the man's death and you hear all of these statements about what a wonderful...
That's what I was just going to bring up. I was going to say after, I kind of felt the same way with you as you did, pretty much up until he died. And then I started hearing all these super generous stories about him. I mean, Craig Gass, if you haven't heard Craig Gass's story about living at 5150 Studios, go look that up, people. That's fucking funny as hell. But what a lucky motherfucker. Have you heard that story, Todd?
Yeah, he told me.
Yeah.
So, but again, so look, I when I said that statement, I was basing it simply on information I have read in Hit Parader and Circus Magazine over the last 30 years.
And
never met the man personally.
And testimony.
Friends or family.
Right.
This is just look.
Hey, face it. Eddie included. They treated Michael Anthony, and Eddie probably led it. They treated Michael Anthony like shit. So a lot of us super hardcore Van Halen fans have held that against them for all these years. I didn't even go see those 2 reunion tours. I remember talking you into seeing DBT one night in Columbus instead of going to see Van Halen. Do you remember that?
Right.
Yeah, that was the night you attempted to barbecue for the Drive-By Truckers, and a huge rainstorm hit, and it just was a big flop and failure. And I think you were wishing you would have gone to Van Halen.
No, but that was a good night. I remember grilling out for the truckers, and I borrowed that girl's porch at the apartments across from the Newport. Brad was like, "What are you doing, Todd?" I'm like, "I'm making you lunch. Just give me an hour or so. I'll be ready."
Now, speaking of Drive-By Truckers, they often do a great cover of "Ain't Talking About Love." I know we've seen them do it many times. Pearl Jam also play "Ain't Talking About Love" occasionally. Mike McCready, big Eddie Van Halen worshiper. I don't want to make this completely about Eddie simply because we're talking about Van Halen. It's all included in the tribute. Do you ever see any of the other members solo? We talked about Sammy in our, H episode.
I've seen Sammy solo twice. I've seen Dave solo twice.
Okay,
I saw both of them touring together.
Right.
And personally, the best Van Halen show I ever saw was David Lee Roth in 2002. So,
Nice. I got a good Roth story. I saw him again. I saw him solo 4 times. I saw him originally on Eat 'em and Smile in 87. Or I'm sorry, 87. Then saw him on Skyscraper in 88. Isn't that kind of crazy? 2 albums and 2 tours a year from each other. Never would happen today. And then I saw the Sam and Dave tour like you did. Did you see that at Polaris? Did we see that tour?
No, I saw that in Hershey.
Okay. Now,
I think that's where I got the
this
shirt.
is the raw story I want to tell. He played the Alrosa Villa in 1999.
Yeah, I remember the story. Go ahead.
Dave was little down on his luck in his career. So doors opened at, let's see here, doors 7:30. Me and my friend, bass player in my band at the time, Eric Keith, we showed up right at 7:30. We're like, we're going to be up front, on the stage, So we show up at 7:30.
1 a.m.
11 o'clock rolls around. There was no opening act, so and apparently the sound man only had one CD. It was the same Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Don't worry. Be happy.
I remember it, Todd. It was the Red Hot Chili Peppers greatest hits CD, which is called What Hits, and he just played it over. It's probably only 40 minutes long, so we probably heard it 4 times, between 7:30 and then at 11 o'clock. To add insult to injury, Rick Catella, the owner of the El Rosa, comes on the the announce system and says, "Could someone please move their van, from behind the club so that Mr. Roth could get his bus into the club?" He wasn't even fucking there up until 11 o'clock. So he comes on. I remember the show was very good. For some reason, he loaded his own PA. There was a whole new other PA set up in front of the Arosa's PA, which was pretty kick-ass PA. And I just remember when it came time for the encore, he comes out.
Well, that's the only reason Dave got the job in Van Halen was because he had a fucking
because he owned a PA, right? Exactly. Great. If you've ever read Dave's autobiography, which rumor has it was ghostwritten by Henry Rollins, that's freaking awesome. I remember rolling on the floor laughing at the stories of him coming home after a gig and unloading that PA by himself. It's pretty funny visual. I have to get it on his back and move it out. But anyway, so back to the Alrosa story. So he's not even there till 11. He comes out, does a good set. He was hanging on to the last of his hair at this point. He still had the long hair, but he was really trying hard at the point.
He looked like Riff Raff in the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Something like that. But Todd, I remember for the encore, he comes out, first note, big keyboard swell, first note of jump, doot, doot, pop. PA just fucking blows up, man. That show's over. See ya. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
So anyway, if you're gonna get cheated out of one Van Halen song, Jump is nothing to cry over. So.
I can pass on that one.
Right, but so I don't know, Todd. For me, Van Halen just one of the reasons I wore this is I had no Van Halen merchandise. This is not for Notre Dame, the college. This is Notre Dame football for my high school. So Van Halen reminds me of high school. Pretty much, summer of being 16 years old, cruising the strip with some beers, doing some underage drinking, trying to pick up some chicks,
trying to get a stinky pinky.
Just wishing we could be half as cool as Eddie Van Halen.
David Lee Roth, yeah, absolutely.
So
for sure. Well, now, not to get political, Kevin, but all right. So now I show you the button right now. Have you seen the new Biden-Harris ad?
Yes, I have. With the logo. I got to give him credit. That's pretty cool. Pretty cool. I will.
So for those of you who have not seen it, it's a takeoff with a B and an H.
Right.
Biden-Harris, and at the bottom it says "running against the devil." So yeah.
By the time you watch this episode, Biden-Harris will either be our new president and vice president,
or I'm going to be dead.
Or a footnote in history. No, you got to stick around the end of this show if we don't finish it before. The election is just a few days away. You got to hang with me. 2
more episodes, Baker. You can do it.
You got to hang with me, buddy.
Oh, God.
We already have episode W in the can, so we can talk about that. Next week, we have a very special guest. We've talked through many episodes about whether or not we could get Colin Gow on the show. So far, he is not he's not really, been amenable to scheduling. But we did get a member of Watershed. We actually have a member of the band, one of the bands we're going to talk about next week, Todd, coming on the show. Do you want to tell the people who our guest is going to be?
No, I don't. I'm not telling them nothing. No.
All right. They know it's not Colin.
They got to tune in. Yeah. And so if you know anything about the band, there's only one other guy, and he's in South Carolina. So
could technically be up to 3 or 4 other guys. Yeah, maybe
Poochie.
we got
That's
Poochie
not
or Rick
Poochie.
Kinzinger. That would be our luck. We would probably.
We got the keyboard player from 1992. I think he lasted about 2 shows.
We got Andy Harrison from the one gig. He filled in on second guitar. I remember you in the crowd like,
Get on stage, Andy.
Get your own fucking band. Stage. I just remember you saying, "Get your own fucking band, Andy." Shout out Andy Harrison.
We love him too. I know.
All right.
But, all right. So
this has been our tribute to the late great Eddie Van Halen, who, like I said on my Facebook post the night he passed away, he did change my life as much as he changed any guitar player's life. Maybe I didn't pick up the guitar and become a guitar, wizard like a lot of guys did when they heard Eddie Van Halen. But like I said, it really,
it influenced a lot of people who then influenced us. So,
yeah, exactly.
Thank you, Eddie, for all that you did for rock and roll in general. And, and you will be sorely missed.
That's right. All right, Todd, we just got a few more. We've almost made it.
All right, so who knows? We might still be able to get Colin. We got a couple more letters left. We might be able to still get Colin on the show. We'll see what happens.
Yep,
but
next week.
Buckeyes football season has started, baby. So we got a lot to look forward to. And as Kevin mentioned, by the time this airs, we'll have a new fucking president, hopefully. Or
not.
Or our country will be in flames. Yeah, one of the two. So
and either way, we'll have something to talk about.
We're coming back either way, folks.
Right. In the meantime, before the United States burns, check out all our content online.
Watch it now. Watch it now.
Yeah, watch it now before they shut down all the platforms of free speech.
Because the FBI is watching us carefully, Kevin. You know that.
I know.
You know they got my number.
So check us out on YouTube, of course, every week on Sundays. As you're probably watching this now. But podcast comes out on Monday.
Congratulations again to Kevin and Heather Montavon.
Thank you very much. We got lots more coming for you in the near future. And thank you for watching and listening to.
Enjoy that.
About you cold when you were headed for the skies, but you were young and bold, and baby, didn't that change with a wink of your eye? Now no one's talking about those crazy days gone by. No one talks about the times you cried.